Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. Today's discussion, and I think it's when we mean discussion, is really a group discussion. It's about open source and AI. AI is a hot topic, and of course, this is impacting OSPOs. We are seeing more growth in conversations and related topic in the tutor community and OSPOS communities. And we felt like this was a topic that we should bring also here at the Open Source Summit. So hope you enjoy this conversation. But before moving into the topic, wanted to bring some of the recent insights that we have discovered about this area in the latest State of the OSPO and Open Source Management study that came out today. If you haven't seen it yet, you can scan the QR code and go through the reports. We explore where were OSPOs doing this year, where were they making their impact in terms of different domains such as security, emerging trends and technology, compliance, developer experience, and so on. And we had a section on a specific, on how well we're doing in AI, what was the impact, and if they were already being engaging in these conversations. And we had these kind of questions also last year and also this year. And we found that when asking organizations that had an OSPO and organizations that didn't have an OSPO about how effective they were in managing generative AI, those who had an OSPO reported that they were 79% of those organizations with an OSPO said they were being effective in managing generative AI risk compared to the 65% in 2024. So we are seeing a growth in the impact on OSPOs managing AI risk. And we are also saying that the value that OSPOs are providing to the preparedness of emerging technologies is also a bit high. So 66% of those organizations with an OSPO were reporting this readiness for emerging technologies. That also includes not only generative AI, but also other infrastructure like cloud native and so on. And so the reason and the main motivation on this panel was that there's a lot going on in open source in terms of AI and the open source AI ecosystem. Even the world of open source AI is not well defined yet. We are seeing open source models, depending on what you think about open source or not. We are seeing licenses specifically for AI models like the OpenMDY. We are seeing frameworks that defines the openness of the models, like the model openness framework. We are seeing different open source tooling being used. And the thing is that this landscape, it's evolving really, really fast. And to keep up with all these trends and updates, the organizations, most of them are going crazy. And some of them are seeking advice of OSPO. Some of others, they don't think that fits in the OSPO. There's a lot of open questions. And I think today's panel is to spark conversations around this, like what can OSPOs really do for this, even though what the data says here. But here in this session, like what do you think your OSPO, if you're working in an OSPO, can do for AI? And is our organization seeing that value, if there is any value that can provide to those conversations? So for that, we have our great mentors and experts joining the conversation today. So I will let them to introduce themselves. Meanwhile, you will see a small QR code there. As mentioned earlier, that drops to a Slido live Q&A. And we will be, I will be taking those questions and we will be answering them live and discussing together during this panel. So saying that, I'll pass it to Ashley, and we can go this way.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Wolf. I run open source programs at GitHub. That includes our open source program office, OSPO, helping with maintainer community and other open source programs at GitHub. We use a lot of AI at GitHub. We created a product called Copilot, if you've heard of it. So day-to-day for me in OSPO has been considering how AI impacts our workflows, our tools that we're using, and how to support staff at GitHub when they are releasing open source or working with AI systems. So glad to chat more there.
All right, thanks. Then, yeah, I'm David Hirsch. I work at Dynatrace. I'm currently the lead for our open ecosystem, which is the combination of open source and community. So kind of leveraging and managing two different worlds, which in my opinion are the same. AI right now is playing a interesting role, let's put it like that. So I'm mostly helping out the organization identify from a policy / legal perspective how we can handle using AI tools internally and how we can contribute to AI communities as well. Yeah.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Vlatko, and I lead the OSPO at Cisco, a small company you've maybe not heard of. We have a lot of different AI initiatives and tracks going on across a company that not only is very large, but also has several acquisitions. So an OSPO like mine is meant to actually try and bridge the gap between possible different strategies around AI internally within the company, but also what we're doing a lot of is advising on best practices around things like AI models, which we've absolutely created recently, and how those things can actually be unified across a very large company and when it comes to best practices of releasing externally. A bit more about myself. On top of helping with AI internally at Cisco, I'm also a Kubernetes maintainer. We get a lot of AI in Kubernetes as well. And so dealing with that as a maintainer too is also something that we're doing a lot of in terms of policy and general maintainer contribution and collaboration. And so I'm happy to also speak on that as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sachin Bhakar. I work for an energy company. I am leading the open source program office. Although it does not exist, it's still coming into existence. We have been using contributing to code, but this is sort of, let's say, structuring the functionalities that has been there in the company. And with this shift in, I would say, proprietary to open source model, I see that companies will use more open source models. And it's just that whenever there is a discussion about an open source license, the open source program office needs to get involved because they have been dealing with these licenses. So the compliance will be spot on. So, but yeah, I'm still curious to see how this will play out. Yep. Just a disclaimer, sorry for the, whatever I say here, the views are personal, does not represent of my company.
Thank you. And well, for those who doesn't know me, I'm Ana Jimenez. I'm working at Linux Foundation as project manager, mainly on two projects, the Tutor Group, that all people here are part of the community. It's the OSPO community of practice within the Linux Foundation. And I'm also helping at the PyTorch Foundation in an OSPO, academic OSPO outreach program. So helping with education resources to help professors and students on include PyTorch into their curriculum and research, and also give advice on open source AI best practices. So saying that, we have a lot of questions. And we will go to the most voted ones. So if you don't know what to say, but you really see a question that really catches your eye, just thumbs up and it will go to the top of the board. So the first question for all of you: how should OSPO approach AI-generated code that includes open source snippets from a license, compliance, and security aspect? Well, this will go more for OSPO folks even involved more in the compliance side, I will say.
This is a fun one. I mean, there are a lot of considerations that would go into this. I think the first one would be, what is the license associated with the model you're using? A lot of it would go into, what is this being used for? which is always a fun discussion. Is this something that ends up in your product/products? Yeah, I think right now, at least on our side, the approach is we use it as an assistance, not as a, hey, everything that we receive as an output is used one-to-one. It's more, what can we learn from it? Again, this is one of these questions where I think for a while there's even been the struggle for open source in general, how to treat this. So again, these are topics where I'm now getting more and more involved with the AI department within our R&D and doing like this because it's a growing department. And yeah, it's something we need to tackle. And I think the approach is usually to treat it as open source. So check licenses, check what the use will be. And there's also going to be a little bit of trial and error. I hope not too much error.
Was a question how our OSPO is managing compliance around?
Yeah, so it's more, but focus on the open source snippet from the AI generated code.
So again, at GitHub, so we are right now on GitHub, I think in 2024 in the Octoverse report, it's nearly 50% of code on GitHub is created, like AI assisted. So there's already code out there. We're very permissive around open source use and taking dependencies on open source. So our goal is to communicate to staff and to the community that best practice-wise, like around disclosure, like please share if you're in a foundation or organization, if you're open to AI-generated code and accepting your project, as best as you can, disclose that. So it makes it easier for us in OSPOs or companies setting up policies around open source use that we can do our best to take that in. It's still a struggle right now. I don't think the tooling is there quite yet for us to be able to detect that and inventory and take dependency as we'll need in the future with SBOMs and beyond. But disclosure as much as possible for projects. We are embracing it day to day at GitHub, so it's not a question. It's happening out there. We don't want to assume it's not, so somewhere like 70% of maintainers are using some AI tool, so we can't ignore it. I think it's on OSPOs to figure out how to be involved in the policy setting within the company so that it's not something that we are not involved with.
Yeah, definitely. Plus one to what Ashley has said, I would also say that we, specifically at Cisco, not only around open source snippets and code that we're likely using and adopting, but we are big proponents of using a lot of these tools ourselves for our own products that maybe aren't open source. But at the same time, very much working alongside our compliance folks with a kind of a trust but verify approach. We've got the licenses out there for everyone to see of what we're open to adopting and being compliant with. Our compliance teams have a very vigorous process around being able to get SBOMs as needed. And so it's very much something that we are not fighting against either, but at the same time using a lot more education and information so that folks understand what we're actually asking for on the compliance end. We in the OSPO partnering with those compliance folks to keep documentation up to date so that our teams know what they can do and what they can't do. And so an example, you had mentioned models. We have certain models that we would recommend and that we don't recommend, usually on the compliance and legal end. And we have found at Cisco that that's actually been a very useful indicator. Showing the path that they cannot tread allows them to actually work a little bit more efficiently.
So I have a different take here. Any code which is AI generated is risky because you don't know the license. It has been generated by a tool, but it's a snippet which has been captured from an existing library which is present in somewhere in GitHub. Now, if the snippet is small, the risk is low, but if the snippet is big, the risk is high because it is easy to compare and give that proof that you were the creator and this has been captured by the tool. So this is sort of, so I'll put my legal hat at this point is that there is an idea and there is an expression. If the differentiation between idea and expression is less, chances of copyright infringement are less. But if the differentiator is huge, then anyone can just prove it that this was their creative work and they are bound to be given the credit which they didn't get. So again, it's a risky domain, but if someone's using it, they should make small changes, variables and all, so that the snippet is what was generated by AI and what they are implementing in their project is relatively different. So this just blurs the line, but yeah, it's a risky area.
We specifically do this and ask for this in the Kubernetes project as well, where AI-generated code, if folks are choosing to submit any of that as part of a PR, that they've actually reviewed it themselves before possibly wasting the time of very little time maintainers who need to maybe read through a lot of slop to get to something that's worthwhile. We do similarly.
It's similar to like how students used to like change their article that they have generated. So, yeah.
I have two questions that I'm going to merge because I think they are related. So this is more about using AI to assist OSPO work. Like, do you use any AI to assist the OSPO work right now? And then someone else asked, are there any initiative to develop an AI to support OSPO work?
I can answer straight away that our OSPO is definitely looking to build an agent internally based on our docs to answer questions from folks internally easier. We get a lot of the same questions. Our OSPO is very small, of 2 people, and so we want the help so that our documentation can be better to navigate, and a lot of usage internally of some really great AI work that we're utilizing for internal Cisco documentation and search, where we'll be using the same for our own wiki. So we are specifically building a tool around this. There may be more to come.
And not to always be a plug for Copilot, but just to talk about what I'm doing at GitHub OSPO. We also have a relatively small team, like many OSPOs here, maybe a team of 1 or 2. And so for me, I've been using it to help with creating quick, like one-off tools that we might need in the OSPO where we don't have engineering resources available. So for example, I created a workflow the other day that will find empty repositories in the organization. So I can quickly run that and see, hey, all these repos in the GitHub org don't have a README or don't have certain files. So if we're doing quarterly or annual audits, I can quickly spin those up, like using whatever AI tool, whether it's Copilot or something else. That's been a huge, tremendous help because we don't have engineers anymore in our group. So for tool creation, we also use it for chatting with our policy docs. So that can help us in the OSPO to quickly come to an answer, source from our knowledge base of internal docs, and provide that with staff so that if they have the same question that we might get often about, is it okay to use this or to publish under this license, they can chat against our repo to get a response right there rather than always relying on 1 or 2 of us to provide that same response. So in that way, it's been very supportive to help with being able to close the gap or fill the gap where we might not have people available or engineering resources.
Yeah, and here I would just go +1 to both sides. Nothing we've actually set up and rolled out yet, but funnily enough, we've been looking into the same exact thing for not only open source on our side, but also for, let's say, community-related topics. Mostly for internal enablement it's not something we would really have facing the public right now, or let's say our customers or however you want to look at it. But, and then the same thing is actually on the other side to reevaluate all of our GitHub repositories, even the usage of licenses for the people that we have. So to make sure that, is someone actually using this? Or has there been any traffic on this repository? Does it make sense to retire it? So all these types of considerations where in the past there was a lot of manual labor. Have we found a good way yet? Probably not. That's why we haven't rolled it out yet. Because we have to also figure out, hey, maybe this project can still be considered healthy. It just doesn't meet the same, let's say, expression and metrics, let's say, that other projects do. So that's the part that we're missing, because otherwise it'd be like, okay, this project that popped up 6 months ago but is doing great for being 6 months old will get retired because it just doesn't meet the requirements we've set. So this is another consideration.
My views are aligned with the panel. So I think the OSPO has not started using AI tools, but I use it to create awareness letters and the documentation that we are updating. It just speeds up the entire process. So pretty much on that.
Another question, what are new policies OSPO should introduce related to AI? If you can list like 1 or 2 that.
The Cisco OSPO is formalizing what model cards should look like for AI models. I specifically have talked to actually quite a few different OSPOs at different companies, so that we have a very similar approach, but definitely standardizing that so that at least on the best practice end for docs, we're kind of aligned across the company, across acquisitions. We're not churning out lots of AI models, but at the same time, you can never predict what will be happening in different corners of the organization. And we are specifically doing this, we're doing it as we speak, myself and our Open Innovation Legal team, specifically aligning this with the EU AI Act and what we need to provide based on that act as well in our model cards, so that we're kind of doing two birds with one stone.
In our checklist, we've now added a new line. So if people are releasing open source, we now ask if there's any involvement with AI systems. We have a responsible AI team at GitHub. So if they are, we make sure that that's a step in the process. We've coordinated with them on the process so that we can help them and support them with any guidance that's needed or considerations. Also, coming up with guidance and recommending to others, if you are releasing models, like take into consideration licensing around models, data sets, weights, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we've established quite a robust process to figure out more, always on the internal side, which AI products can be used or are, let's say, easier to use. That was probably the main thing at this point. And coming up with the list of, do not touch for now was the fun part, especially meeting all of the different needs from different parts of the organization. That's going to be a fun one for everyone. Because going for R&D, sure, you want some coding assistance, whether it be your Copilot or your Claude or whatever, all the way to your legal and finance departments that are like, hey, maybe we can simplify things. So it's going to be, it's been interesting, but we have, again, a specific team that works on really going through the different tools and a lovely, as everyone knows, traffic light system, same as for licenses in the end.
Coming up with those do not use lists often unearths people using those things, I find.
So with my company, I don't know about others, but the AI work is led by a different team. I think there is a fight to work on the AI platform in every company. Everyone wants to get on the board. So, and we have just made sure that whenever open data or any open source is used for AI purposes, the OSPO is consulted. But for now, there are no policies in place. It's still work in progress. But yeah, there is a check mark, is that whenever they see open data, open source, they should consult OSPO.
Okay, I have two questions that, again, I'm going to merge because they are related. So the question is, what is the clear distinction between the role of the OSPO and of the AI lead team or center of excellence? I've also heard AI program officer. And then there is another question related, that is, do OSPOs need to evolve to open source AI program offices or something broader?
I'll start off. I think it depends. Ultimately, the goal of the OSPO remains the same. We want our organizations to be successful with open source or openness. And so some OSPOs have morphed and evolved to add more scope so that they can be part of rolling out or experimenting with AI tools, because we're already situated in the place within the company that has shown success with coordinating with legal, with security, with engineering, with comms, with IT, with all the teams that need to be on the same page around open source. And so it makes a lot of sense to leverage your OSPO, if you aren't already, for AI policy and tooling evaluation. So that is already happening. I think some companies might be calling it something different, but ultimately OSPOs can be that vehicle. If we choose, we can evolve to do that. It doesn't change the goals though. Like, we still want success around open ecosystems and for compliance to play a role in there. It just adds more to what we're already doing.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's essentially an expansion of topics. It's just adding, okay, you could treat it exactly not exactly the same way, but very similarly to open source, in the sense, even teaching and still enabling the rest of the organization to learn how to contribute to a community and an open source or open whatever is still, I would say, the main goal, the main mission we have. And I would say the fact that there is an AI specific part in the company is an advantage. The same way you have a legal team that is an expert in legal affairs, it makes sense to have someone who is specialized in that. So we are just, it's just a cooperation. It's not a replacement of any sort, to be honest. It's more of a collaboration. We have knowledge that they don't, and they luckily have knowledge that we don't, because we wouldn't necessarily know how to handle every aspect of an AI model of whatever pops up. So yeah, definitely just a collaboration and expansion.
Yeah, big agree on the collaboration. We also have a responsible AI team at Cisco, and every time what the OSPO does is that when we have new small projects that want to be released under a Cisco banner and they're AI related, we also have a checkbox of are you doing AI? Let's loop in our responsible AI team and do the responsible AI assessment. And so on top of that collaboration, I think what's also part of the evolution, the question around the evolution of OSPOs, I think that's already partly happening because at least, especially in the Cisco OSPO, we're very much seen as the experts of, is this AI thing really open source? And we say, oh, like we can talk for many hours about what that means and looking into all of this. And we're doing a lot of internal education about trying to get folks to understand that if the company or whoever producing this AI product or thing says it's open source, just look a bit deeper and check. Is the license open source? Great. And the license usually then states that you should be able to access the code and some of the data or information about the data. And if you can't access those things, then the license may be meaningless, and let's discover why that is. And so some of that evolution, I think, is already happening in a lot of the education aspects, but also in a lot of the safe use of AI as well. And partnering with that responsible AI team helps with that too.
I would see this as, so I've seen OSPOs are placed in different functions in every company. In some companies, it will be part of, let's say, very legal heavy, compliance heavy. In some companies, it will be just part of a risk and assurance that it's a tick mark. In some companies, it will be part of tech office or strategy office. So wherever it is in tech or strategy office, I see that it should work with the AI team or should even have its own like AI ethics team. But if it's the former, if it's part of compliance or risk and assurance, we can't do much. The task is defined, and that's how it should be done.
I wanted to add that all of you have raised a really important thing, that is how open source is within AI at some point, and of course doesn't make sense to separate it because it's the ground of it. I want to highlight this because even though many open source specialists we know about that, I think another challenge that I've seen when talking with organizations is my organization is investing a lot in AI, but they are taking away the open source conversations because they don't think it's integrated, right? So perhaps one of the challenges will be, yes, we know open source is like AI is an extension of OSPOs because you already are the expert, you're already collaborating with other teams, but how to share this value to the executives and decision makers of the organizations, how to let them know that if they are not putting the OSPO into those conversations, they are missing a lot the AI and machine learning ecosystem that it's powered by open source. This is not a question, a specific question, but will be perhaps an open question. And I'm going to go to the next one that is somehow similar. That is, where was it? I lost it. Sorry about that.
But I'll add on to what you're saying, what you're looking for, just that we are positioned, whether it's AI or the next emerging technology. I think that's the beauty of OSPOs. It could be something else, but because of how we're structured, the webs, the connections, the dotted lines that we've created in our process and our tools, that's really what situates us well. And it hopefully has underpinnings that are open source and creating open ecosystems, but it makes the most sense to keep OSPOs in the loop and involved and consulted at a minimum.
Okay, there was another question more specific. Should we have a standardized TXT file like AI TXT at the project folder root, just like security TXT or robot TXT, indicating the presence of generative AI content? I will ask, like, is this something that you're, for instance, in the best practices and so on, something that you're looking in your OSPO, or?
I would think it's at the foundation level maybe now, or I'm curious if in Kubernetes you're seeing this, like, I would suspect that's something happening there, maybe not at OSPOs.
Yeah, so we, in the Kubernetes project, we are, there is a very fun PR that we're currently looking at that adds a agents.md to be able, specifically in the kind repo, to specifically help the many contributions that are coming in that are absolutely using these AI assistants. So that rather than fighting against that contribution, we're trying to hopefully not waste too much of a maintainer's time when they have to review these PRs that are coming in. And there's a lot of discussion around how the wording of that MD is, where on one side, it seems that there's a lot of encouragement to use the tools, versus the other side, how do we balance that we want to tell them that they need to read the output and review it themselves before they hit submit on that PR. And also what we as maintainers are willing to or able to do in not accepting those kinds of contributions. And then on that end, specifically around our documentation, and that includes API docs as well, we are very specific around AI-generated contributions need to be actually minimal, and specifically only allow it on the localization and translation front as a starting point, not as a final submission in terms of PRs. So yes, and that agents MD PR is still open as a possibility that us in the community are discussing. In terms of the Cisco OSPO, are we putting AI.text or AIMD in as part of our best practices of documentation? No, not yet, I want to say, but yet as a question mark. We're not yet assessing if that's useful, because we have a lot of the work that we're doing is around agent-to-agent AI too, specifically. And so there's an implication there, partly. But on top of this, Cisco generally, when we talk about AI, and everyone in this room knows that we're talking about things like LLMs and agents and so on. But AI in Cisco has been around for quite a long time, and we're talking about neural networks, machine learning models. We use a lot of that, and we produce a lot of that too. And so having to discern and specifically correctly categorize is actually very important to us too. So having an AI.md or AI.text actually would be probably more confusing, because we're then grouping everything under this one bracket when actually the blurred background that you have in your video conferencing is AI too, if we're taking that to consideration. So we are specifically looking more around definition and defining to be able to then separate what is the LLM AI tooling versus neural networks, machine learning models that we're specifically using and relying on as well.
I don't have an answer to this. No, we have not started using anything like AI.text, anything like that. I would say at this point it's considered in a similar way as attribution, recognizing where this code came from and stating this code was partially produced by. The same way in your thesis you would list references, and now people list also AI tools they've used. Similarly, I would do a similar thing for AI when it comes to projects. But luckily and sadly at the same time, we haven't had this issue yet. I'm somewhat looking forward to and dreading it at the same time.
I like that idea of the footnote or the references. That's a cool way to think about it.
No comments here.
Okay, there's a question that can be also general one. Do you have any suggestions for an open source AI company that is starting up an OSPO to help support outbound contributions to dependencies? And I will think this can also be applied to not just an open source AI company, but as an organization, if you have any best practices to start.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, do you have any suggestions for a company or organizations that it is starting up an OSPO to help support outbound contributions to dependencies.
See, I didn't get the question. Can you just,
So,
or can you just show me that?
yeah, so the
Which one?
outbound contributions to dependencies. So it's not an AI topic, I would say. I think it's more the role of the OSPO in helping with upstream contributions to projects,
Yeah, I mean, it
to
can
to the dependencies of certain projects, in this case.
it
and
can
others.
definitely filter out the, I would say, risky licenses, or as the industry standard term is like strong copyleft licenses, to just to just differentiate between which one should be catered first, which one should be catered at a later point of time, or is like has lower risk. So that's one that it can help the team, the OSPO, whenever they are reviewing the dependencies, that this is something we can live with, and this is something we have to get rid of. But that's the one suggestion I can come up as of now.
Yeah,
Others?
we specifically, on top of a lot of documentation to help facilitate and encourage contributions upstream to dependencies, projects that we rely on. An example I have recently that folks may be aware of, there was the name of the project is escaping me, but I'll think of it as I keep speaking. There's a project that recently put out on Reddit that they were pausing releases because they lacked maintainers. Oh, what is it called? It'll come to me. ESO, and ESO lack maintainers, and said we had to pause releases. We just do not have the maintainers left. I believe they use the term, "We are blackmailing you, the community, into helping us," which is an interesting use of words. But basically, from this post that then went out onto LinkedIn, a lot of people seeing this, there was a lot of interest in helping out, which is great. ESO is an incubating project with the CNCF, and they had they're a sandbox project with the CNCF, and they had an application out to reach incubation, and that application had to be denied because of their lack of maintainers. But that actually spun up conversations internally at Cisco, because there was many teams that were relying on that specific project at Cisco. And so the OSPO's role there was to say, okay, let's help uncover what other teams are also relying on ESO, so that we can get them together to see what resources we can pull into actually helping this project if we rely on it so much. And so we acting as that kind of collaborator, pulling the pieces together internally to help with that, I think was something that, more than just having documentation and answering questions, it was really us putting ourselves out there to connect these disparate departments, and to then suggest what can be done. And we, in terms of the project wanting to help them get to incubation level, we said, okay, let's put Cisco on the adopters list. Let's help you with the reviews that happen at the incubation level when they want to speak to adopters and write a blog post or a testimony and so on. And these are little ways that the upstream contributions can happen, that maybe a team doesn't have the resources, the engineering resources to actually contribute upstream, but they can talk about their use case, and they can talk about why it's important, and that's another contribution that's worthwhile doing. So that was an interesting, different example of how contributing upstream to your dependencies or any projects that you're depending on was worthwhile, and it's because it happened because maybe that project was going away, and that would not be good for us.
And if you're not already, definitely take inventory of your dependencies. Like, pull your dependency graph, see what you rely on. If you can find out the number of teams relying on it, even better. And something you can do immediately is pull from the OpenSSF project the criticality score. I think there's an action and an API, or if you don't have that many dependencies, perhaps you could manually do this, but you're able to pull in, are those unmaintained? Are there a lot of security vulnerabilities on it? And you could see from your dependencies there where they could use help, whether that's contributing code, sponsoring, and find a way to help, because to sustain that dependency you have. It's more than likely you have thousands of dependencies, so if you can do something programmatic, even better. But that's a great starting point to look at what your highest risk through criticality score dependencies are and start contributing there, or what's your most dependent on.
Definitely agree. Take inventory of all your dependencies. Do this regularly, please. And another fun little thing you can do is go, if you're a Linux member, Linux Foundation member, sorry. There's a lovely little tool where you can throw in your SBOM and it will calculate the value of the software you're using. Which, if you need to justify the possible investments because you are already taking advantage of these products, of these projects, you can a bit more easily justify investing a small amount of money in sponsoring a project or dedicating some internal resources to be maintainers. It could be infrastructure resources as well. So there are a lot of options there.
Yeah, I believe Frank Nagel, who wrote a great, co-authored a great report called The Value of Open Source, alongside a couple other folks from Harvard Business School, who is now the chief economist of the Linux Foundation, says that many companies would need to spend 3.5 times more if they couldn't rely on open source. And so you can think about a company like Cisco in terms of the number and see why we think contributing upstream is super important.
And one other suggestion is make it really easy for people at your company to contribute. Don't put a lot of barriers in place, especially if it's just a bug fix. Like, of course, if they have to sign a CLA or something, you might want to process for it. But the more open and easy it is for people to jump in and contribute back to the project, the more they'll be encouraged. Or if you can acknowledge them or set up a reward system for people who are contributing, the better. And that's definitely a role that the OSPO can play.
So I'm afraid we have come to the end of this panel. I want to mention that we haven't been able to go through all the questions, but the idea is to make a summary blog post and try to answer all together and keep the conversation going. And the Tutor Slack topic OSS AI, because part of this inspiration came from that that group. It's not even a working group, it's just a group discussion where people just added, hey, this is a new model coming in, have you heard this license, this model? So it's a really nice place for OSPOs to go and check what's going on. There are some initiatives like being cooked there. And also, in case you want to more formalize, to contribute to a more formalized framework, there are the two working groups also going in on with the OSPO book, the open source in business guide, and so on. So welcome to keep joining.
And Anna, where can folks find that blog post when we publish it?
Oh, we can find it in the To-Do website, in the To-Do blog.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.